You know his reviews got you further than the critics would ever do. Give him a minute if you will, he'll explain what's wrong with their views. He knows what rocks, what sucks, what really sucks. If you don't agree with him, that's fine. Time now for the critics critic. When most people think of Confused Matthew, they automatically think of either his Lion King or 2001: A Space Odyssey reviews. You may think I should have done one of those, but there are already so many out there that I would just be repeating what everyone else has already said. What about Back to the Future Part 2? Well, there's been considerably less than the other two, but YouTube user Buck555 has already done an excellent commentary on that video. I'll put a link in the description. So, I decided to do something different that Matthew probably thought no one would disagree with him with. Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace. Matthew's first question is that if the Trade Federation and Naboo are both of the Republic, then why are they trading with themselves? Why does the Trade Federation want to stop trade with Naboo, and why send Jedi and not tax collectors to negotiate? Well, Matthew, the Republic is not like a country. It's just a way of government. Basically, it's the same as the US being a democracy and France being a democracy and still trading with each other. That's kind of how trade works. Yes, we do still trade with monarchies and dictatorships, but we also trade with other democracies. As to your second question, I thought it was pretty obvious that they want to take over Naboo. Cutting them off is how they are going to do it. And since they're so determined, tax collectors aren't going to stop them, but Jedi might. He also questions if the Federation are trying to tax Naboo, or kill them, and why a Republic has a queen. First, like I said earlier, they are trying to take over Naboo. I thought that was pretty clear, but I don't know. And to answer question 2, because they can. He then asks how the Gungan city can be hidden despite being brightly lit and apparently not very deep. Well, first, we never see the city at night, as far as I remember. So maybe they turn the lights off, or maybe it's because they're Jedi and a science fiction movie. Who knows, maybe those masks allowed them to go deeper than humans are usually allowed to. He then says the next 10 minutes in the submarine are boring because there's no threat of danger. Matthew, there were 3 monsters that attacked him. How is that not dangerous? And as for no character development, I think I learned that Obi-Wan is damn good at driving a submarine. Yeah, it's small and never really comes up again, but it's something. He skips ahead to when they arrive on Tatooine and says it's impossible to understand Watto, which I don't get. I understand just fine. This is the first we get of Matthew's annoying nicknames for Padme. Queen Umaduba. I'll spare you the number of times he says this because he just rams it into the ground and it isn't funny. At all. Then he says Anakin doesn't know anything because he thinks angels live on the moon. Matthew, I don't think he was talking about heaven angels. They're probably an alien species that are the most beautiful creatures in the universe. And then Matthew actually makes a good point by saying it would have been easier for Qui-Gon to reveal himself as the Jedi to Watto, promise twice what it's worth, and threaten him. Good for you, Matthew. You actually made a good point. Give yourself a pat on the back. Moving inside, he questions the reasoning for Anakin building 3PO. Yeah, it's fan service, but then again, it's fan service! He then asks how Anakin was able to build a protocol droid, a scanner, and a pod racer with no money. Well, I have a couple answers. 1, he stole them. He's surrounded by these parts, so it's pretty easy. 2, maybe they're made of parts that were unable to be used for anything else, so Watto just gave it to him. And maybe I'm wrong, but I thought the pod racer was Watto's, that Anakin was just fixing it. But what do I know? And as for time, he's a slave. He literally works for, I'd say, 8 to 10 hours and then has absolutely nothing else to do. He has no money, so it's not like he can really go out and do anything. And he's really good at building things, so they probably aren't that complicated for him to make. He could probably crap a protocol droid out in a month. Part 2. Matthew starts by saying that the movie isn't just bad because of plot holes, but because it's boring. Okay, Matthew, that's your opinion. You can back it up, but if I find the movie entertaining, I find it entertaining, and you can't really say I'm wrong. Then he says that all the characters except Qui-Gon are forgettable. Again, your opinion. I liked these characters. He then goes on about how the Jedi should be focusing more on freeing the slaves than digging around with the trade conflict. Well, first of all, Matthew, don't you think the Jedi have a lot more to worry about than freeing slaves that aren't part of the Republic? They are on the brink of war and they are supposed to be worrying about freeing these guys? Hey Matthew, why don't we, the US, with our powerful army, just go over to North Korea and free those poor people from their dictator? Oh right, because we have other things on our mind. He then says that Anakin should just steal the part they need for the ship. Well, Matthew, if you saw the film, you would know that Qui-Gon senses a strong force in the boy and believed he was the chosen one and was said in the prophecy. So naturally, he would want to free Anakin. He couldn't do that if Anakin just stole the part for them and they left. Next, he questions what a Sith is. It's a Jedi that had been turned to the dark side of the Force? Duh. Then he questions the Immaculate Conception, saying it has no purpose. Well, actually, Matthew, this is supposed to be like the Virgin Mary giving birth to Jesus. Jesus died for our sins, Anakin sacrificed himself to bring balance to the Force. Matthew summarizes the pod race in one sentence. Well, yeah, Matthew, you can do that for a lot of action scenes. Luke blows up the Death Star, the Empire breaches the base but everyone escapes. Leia and Luke are separated after killing several stormtroopers. And really, that's it for part 2. He actually skips over quite a bit of this movie. Part 3. Matthew begins by complaining about the midichlorians. Okay, first off, Matthew, it's science fiction, so the Force not being magic isn't a big deal. And second, for a guy who just complained about the Immaculate Conception, you have no right to complain about this. After a couple minutes, he says that there is no mention of a prophecy in the original films. Well, yeah, because after Anakin turned to the dark side, they all gave up hope on this whole prophecy thing since it ended with the death of most of the Jedi. He then does make a good point about just signing the treaty and bringing it back as evidence. But after that, he goes on to saying that the vote of no confidence is only one person voting and then the Chancellor is taken out of power. No, Matthew. Padme ordered a vote of no confidence, and then the rest of the Senate voted in favor of the Chancellor being removed. We have that here on Earth. It's called impeachment. After making another decent point about bringing the Chancellor back to Naboo, he then complains about the age. He says Anakin is 8. He's 11. When they get to Naboo, he says that bringing Anakin was stupid and then compliments the film on the final lightsaber fight. Yes, Matthew can give compliments when he's not being a total dick and remembers that movies have more to them than just writing. He does question the red shields, but since we don't know what they are controlling, I don't see what the problem is. Since they're blocking the hangar, maybe they're there to protect against attacks. I don't know. But for all we know, this could be really important. Then he says Darth Maul was stupid for not doing anything when Obi-Wan jumped up and killed him. Dude, did you see how fast that was? I would be calling bullshit if he did manage to block them. He then complains about Anakin being able to fly into the ship, failing to remember that Anakin is the best star pilot in the galaxy, even at age 11. This is that character development thing you were complaining about earlier. And really, that's about it. He just sort of goes through the rest of the movie, calls it dumb at the end, and ends it. You know, I admit that he brought up some good points about the story, but that doesn't mean the movie sucks, because as far as I'm concerned, Confused Matthew is a story critic. And since he didn't comment on much of what made this movie, a movie, and only half of its complaints about the story actually made sense, I feel safe calling this movie good.